And our first item is the 2026 budget and levy. And I know this is going to be Terry's topic.
And it's going to be riveting. Be good. Manager, so there's been a couple different versions of this memorandum, but we'll go through the tables. And in front of you, you should have the latest and greatest copy of the memorandum, as well as all of the tables for the budget. And then the communication plan is also there. So we'll go through those. I want to go through the budget in some detail tonight, as I think it'll be beneficial for the managers to understand what these line items are actually used for, and how we came to those calculations. So just to kind of familiarize yourself with the timeline in the past, our budget and levy is due to Carver County and Hennepin County auditors September 15th of the year. Past years, we have presented a rough draft in August, and then held public hearing in September, and then put budget forward. Trying to get a little bit ahead of it this year, which is somewhat difficult because we only have so much financial data that we've gone through to try and estimate where we're going to be at this year. So last year I came to you with nothing to do with the levy. We just talked about the budget itself and make sure that the priorities were the priorities that the managers had. Tonight, I'm going to actually present to you a budget and levy. The intention is to hold the public hearing at the August meeting and then to put forward the budget at the September meeting. In the past, we'd held the public hearing in September and then put it forward in September, which, doesn't really give much time or any time other than the meeting itself to make any changes based on that. However, the resolution can be changed tonight at the meeting if the managers want to push the public hearing back to September because they have more information that they would like. We can certainly do that. But right now, the way the resolution that's written, that's on the board packet tonight, is to call the meeting for August, and then September, we would adopt it and submit it. So real quickly, the things that I want to take out of the memo are really that based upon projections of what we have spent to date and where Engineer Sobiek and I know we are with projects, we anticipate to have a carryover of about $5.3 million. So we're in the second paragraph. We know I'm proposing a levy of about 5.25 million. I'm assuming investment income of about $250,000. So in years past, it was whatever the interest we got on what was sitting there. Projected right now, if we still maintain the same return on investment that we're getting now, it'd be about $332,000. We would get, I don't know, I don't know where we're at. So a lot of this, I just assumed $250,000, and let's hope for better, which gives us cash on hand of about $9.88 million. The expenses that we're going to go through amount to about $6.85 million. So that leaves us about $3.03 million reserved, which works out to be about 44%, 41% of our budget. Now, I am not including within that any grants. We have been awarded the Lessard-Sams grant, but at this time, we are not in a position to actually utilize that grant. So that grant has not been included into this budget at all. All right. So let's jump over to the actual. So the first pink or chartreuse or whatever color that is, lavender, we're going to skip right past that, but that's the broad overview. This is what I am proposing we would publish in the newspaper for the public hearing. It has our budgets in a more generalized sense without much of the detail. And then the capital projects are just broken down by creek. And here's our total revenue and total expenditures, leaving us reserve about $3 million. Okay, so the first thing I'd like to go through is our administrative budget. So the administrative is really everything to do with facility management, staff management, board management, governance, those type of things. So we went through at the last meeting where we came up with the manager cost, board administration cost for the 2026 year. I didn't see it. I did add a little bit more based upon the discussion about reimbursement of mileage for meetings. So I did add something for that. I just assumed an average of 15 miles per manager per meeting. Put that in there. Employee staff, employer staff time. There are a number of things that went into this, assumptions that were made on this. First, I'm assuming a staffing of 11 people, but I think we'll have further discussion on staffing at a later meeting. But I assumed 11 people, the positions that we had talked about in the past, backfilling some of the positions that we're losing. I also put into that, starting next year, we need to have paid leave insurance. DEED, Department of, help me.
Employment and Economic.
Yeah, those people, yeah, Department of Employment and Economic Development, they have a calculator that you can use based on that, but it works out to be roughly 0.88% of payroll. So that has been added in there since the last time we met. Assuming $1,500 per employee times 11 employees for professional development, and then just general staff expenses of 6,000. So these numbers, Manager DeBell, finally do work out to where they should be. So about $1.06 million. That's because of the two additional staff, that's about 100,000, 120,000 more than it has been in prior years. General office. So our rent is fixed. It increases every year per the lease that we have. That's by far and away the biggest expense of all this. That's 119,000. The other larger expenses that are in here, telecommunications, that includes all of the cell phones that we have. That includes telecommunication for our Wi-Fi, for our tablets to do our inspections and do our data collection, and then utilities. That also includes the WOM station. Dues and memberships and insurance and bonds. So these have caused a little confusion in the past. So dues and memberships are our dues to Minnesota watersheds. And if we were to join, like, say, so Alcasia will join one of the business associations just to keep apprised of what's going on. But that's what that's for. Insurance and bonds, that's the managers. That's through the League of Minnesota Cities. It's bonding for you, as well as our workers' compensation. So we've limited that. Professional services, audit. I kept the audit and the accounting the same. We have talked in the past about if we can realize savings by utilizing Sage or something else. Until we had that, I thought it better to just kind of keep that there. What I am proposing, and I've talked to Manager DeBell about this, is that when we write the RFQ to go out, that is one of the criteria that we put in there for selection, is that you have available to us software through a cloud-based or other system where we can input directly into it. So I think that's going to be the best way to get that happening. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. Engineering, legal services, I mean, I assumed 3%, 3.5%. I don't know. Lewis nobody said anything to me to change it from what I've got proposed. So, however, there is one thing that so we had talked in the past about project manager. I think at this time, until we get through some of the planning, we definitely don't have budget to do it this year. We just don't. We're going to be pushing right up against it with salary staff this year. And talking with engineer Sobiak, he did not think it would add additionally to the cost of projects. And then that for BAR to do it. And then that project management cost would be rolled into the project cost itself as opposed to in their general services. And engineer Sobiak is hired to ask specific questions about that. I'm not going to put words in his mouth. I just wanted to make it clear that we did have a discussion about it. The permanent grant database is another, so that's the MS forefront, and we use that to maintain our permit database and our grant database. The 15,000 that's in there is for end user agreement or license agreement, as well as regular maintenance. So oftentimes we'll want a special report to pull out or kick out of it. And then that money is there for them to generate that or create that template for us to utilize. The Citizen Advisory Committee and the Technical Advisory Committee, I did increase a little bit. However, when we get to the 10-year plan, I put more money in the 10-year plan budget because that's when we'll really be utilizing them more, would be as we go through that 10-year plan process. And that also includes the strategic, or the what are we calling it? Strategic plan? No. Oh, what do we call the other review committee for the 10-year plan?
Steering committee,
Pardon?
the steering committee.
Thank you.
Well,
That's it. And that will also include the steering committee. So in my administrator's report, I've moved on to fleet maintenance. In the administrator's report for several months, I had been putting on that we need to replace the Ford. It's getting long in years, long in tooth. It needs to be pushed down the road. I am going to try and get another year out of it, but in data collection, I have started levying some funds for acquisition of a truck in 27, kind of the thought. And then left that last line item in, but not put any funding into that. Before I move on, are there any questions or discussion or thoughts, comments on administrative budget items?
Administrator Jeffrey. So on the salary benefits taxes, you had 11 people in there, and that's up from what we have now. 11 people, and then how does that match up with what you said about
I'm
Not
having
having-
troubles hearing you.
up on the top, you had salary, staff, benefits, taxes.
Yep.
And 11 people in there, 120 higher than last year, and that was for 2 more people.
Yep. So
And how does that relate to the last comment you made about not having money for additional staff this year?
So this current year, we don't have money. So we will use up our salary.
Okay, this is starting January.
Yes, so this is starting in January that this
Okay,
would be
thank
for
you.
11 staff, yeah.
No. Madam Person?
Yes.
You just sort of blew by the lawsuits. Is that a separate
So
or not a budget item or contained
I'm not
within
putting it
legal?
in as a budget item. I'm optimistic. Given some of the discussion, and we'll
Okay.
go into closed session later this evening and, but yeah, I'm optimistic. But if managers would like me to dedicate and allocate funds to that, we certainly can. There's no reason not to. You know,
I would defer to Mr. Smith to give us advice on that. Can do that after the closed session. Thank you.
anything else within the administrative budget?
Mm-mm.
Okay, district-wide, these are just what it says, district-wide programs, programs that are meant to benefit throughout the district rather than to target a specific water resource. I'll dig in it a little bit for you. So starting with the 10-year management plan, this one has been the largest increase over previous years. We had 100,000 in it. Manager Crafton just tried to call. Last year, upping it to 230,000 because next year will be really the meat of completion of this plan. Within that, there are funding dedicated. We have talked for a couple of years now, and we are also part of a DEI committee for Minnesota watersheds about getting a consultant in there. So there is funding set aside to have a DEI consultant come in and work with us. The other part, like I said, the TAC expense is put in there, and that would also be the steering committee, the technical advisory committee. And that is different from events. Those events would be where we host pop-up events, or we host an evening English watershed or something where we bring in other various audiences to talk to. Then legal engineering, we will have most of the modeling done under the current Mitchell Lake and Lake Ann plans that we're working on right now. However, there will be updating chapters 1, 2, 3, 6. I forget some of the other ones. Looking at what the models show us and identifying other mitigating areas within the district. So, so there's monies in there for engineering to do that, and then of course, legal will need to consult with us throughout on this project. And so AIS inspection and early response. We partner with the cities of Chanhassen and Eden Prairie, as well as Carver County, to staff inspections at Lakes Riley, Lotus, and Lotus Lake Conservation Alliance. At Lakes Riley, Lotus, Mitchell, and Susan. And the 62,500 reflects the 32,000 that we cost share with Eden Prairie, and the 12,500 cost share with the city of Chanhassen and the Lotus Lake Conservation Alliance. And that includes, we've used that funding for instance, when we found zebra mussels on Lake Ann and we did a rapid response on it. So that funding is also available for that. Our last conversation with of the resolution of support for the zebra mussel project on Lake Riley, if there were miscellaneous expenses for coring or data collection associated with that, we would also take it out of this as well. The stewardship program, grant, although we're getting rid of that. The stewardship program, really we're holding that static of where we were at in preceding years. We would like to come back and have a larger discussion with the managers about where they see the stewardship program going. It's one I would like to involve legal with, because there are public purposes expenditures and how it plays into that. So, but right now we're looking at, we do have some minor tweaks. We're looking at some of the smaller projects that aren't really habitat restoration as much as they're just planting some native plants. We're looking at, would it make more sense to just do a rebate program, $150 rebate or some type of rebate program with that, and then really try and focus on the larger habitat restoration, buffer projects, et cetera. So we would like to probably looking at an October meeting with the managers to discuss that, to discuss the grant program or the stewardship program, excuse me. Data collection. So within this, the biggest line item is equipment. So we are purchasing at least one sonde The SON is what all of the sensors are plugged into to get our continuous monitoring data. We will be purchasing a flow tracker, is what it says it is, and 11 data loggers to go into the wells, the shallow monitoring wells. So that's the 95.5 that's in there. And within that 95.5, whatever remains, I would like to be able to carry forward to apply to the next pickup truck to replacing the Ford. I don't know what, if the last quotes that we got are still close to valid, it'd leave us about $40,000 to put towards, and then we'd levy the rest of it depending on what we get, how to get the rest next year. Lab analysis is the next really large expense, and we have taken on a lot more sampling. So one of the things we're doing, the city of Eden Prairie did their own lake vegetation management surveys. They had a different company do it. And when we would compare the results of ours with theirs, they did not align well at all. So we just offered to take it all over so that it's all done. We know it's going to be done the same way. We know it's going to be done the same protocols. So that's part of it. We're also looking at additional sampling on Lake Riley, depending on what the zebra mussel project does, as well as we know that the wetland south of Lake Susan is a significant loader. So we want to look at as an alum application appropriate for that. And we do have one, I did set aside funding for that wetland. We'll talk about the capital project. That's going to be one where we'll need to do a plan amendment in order to incorporate that into our plan. The rest of it are really staff expenses. So I did put money in here. They wanted to hire a seasonal intern. That's another conversation I want to have with the board, which is another reason why I don't want to go out and hire staff yet. We have 2 staff that are leaving us in August. And so I want to really meet with the personnel committee and then meet with the overall board, look at where we're going in the plan. I've met internally with the data collection staff, as well as regulatory staff about, are there efficiencies? Are there overlaps? Are there downtimes for one department where they could be used in another department? So we'll have that larger discussion, but that's what that 12,000 is line item for, is seasonal employee within data collection. The district groundwater assessment is the monitoring well program. So we were going to advance them this year. It's still possible that we will advance them this year. This is money that was already levied and allocated this year for it. So this isn't new levy. If you look at the last sheet, you'll see that it carries forward. So we might still get it in this year. I've been having troubles coordinating with the cities and identifying a spot where they're comfortable having them placed, because they're all being placed either in right of way or in a park. And so they just want to make certain that it's not going to interfere with their future expansions or turn lanes or recreational activities. Community resilience, is it's updating and finishing our district-wide model. That's what this is for. So the flood risk assessment modeling that has been done for Bloomington and Eden Prairie, and Minnetonka has done theirs. And then we would finish up Chanhassen, Deep Haven, Shorewood, and a little bit of Chaska. I have talked to engineer Sobiak. My hope is that we would be able to run the full model with the most up-to-date H&H precipitation and temperature data that we have. So I might have just dropped that in your lap, but that's what I want to do. And then education outreach. Manager DeBell caught this. It's only reduced $10,000 from what it was, and that reduction really is reflecting a couple of things. One, we have not been spending all the way up to it. And two, a lot of the education outreach that's going to be going on will be done concurrently with the plan itself. So a lot of that funding will be absorbed in the plan. This is the one area that if the managers wanted to reduce budget, I think we could do it smaller with. I hesitate to though, because every time we've met with the EHAP or another plan, it really goes back to education outreach and the things that they need to do. So I'd really like to keep that budgeted as well as possible. The events are the big ones. We are looking at doing an evening with the watershed in October of this year, with the exception of the one weekend in October. So it'll be either the second or the fourth Thursday in October. So we're looking at Green Acres on Pioneer Trail. So we're waiting to hear from them as to their availability. But those are the types of things we want to get back to doing. The district had been doing in the past, pre-COVID, COVID hit, and we've just been slow to get up to that. So this would be one of those opportunities where we can invite our county representatives or state representatives, et cetera, and then recognize volunteers or other people who have contributed well to us.
It's wonderful.
Repair and maintenance fund. This was zero this year because we took all that was in there and we put it towards the Lake Susan Park Pond repair to retrofit to make that work again, which is working now. So that is up and running and has been running for a couple of weeks now. Engineer Sobiak and myself are going to hold a TAC in August where we are going to meet with the city engineers and public works people to discuss with them how can we help you with your maintenance costs or logistics. So I put 150,000 in it just as kind of seed money, so we have something there depending on what comes out of it. You know, is it helping them pay for a part-time staff that's dedicated specifically to maintaining these devices? Is it you know, hiring Minnesota natives or some other company to maintain all the infiltration basins? So I want to have that conversation with the city because that's consistently seems to be what we hear from them. We're not opposed to doing these things. We're opposed to, we don't have the expertise or the resources to continue their maintenance long-term. So how can we remove that obstacle? Wetland management has seen the most significant reduction, and that's simply because we are nearing the end of this portion of it. As we go through the next plan, we will start to talk about what we want the wetland management to look like. Do we want to start acquiring easement? Do we want to start identifying wetlands for restoration? You know, what does that look like? So right now, this is really between this and data collection, the soils health that we're working on right now is being paid out of that. So that's really what this is going for, and then finishing up the last of our assessments and how they compare with the new assessment that Bowser is using right now. Lake vegetation implementation. So lake vegetation implementation, professional services, it's our providers, you know, our alum and our herbicide applicators. I met with the Lake Susan, it's not a homeowners association, but all of the residents on Lake Susan about 4 weeks ago now, 3 weeks ago now. And we know, you know, Lake Susan has poor water quality, and we're now to that point in our cycle where that's our next target for our adaptive lake management. So money is programmed in here to start doing whole lake vegetation treatment so that in late 27, we could do an alum treatment. So we will have done the Upper Riley Creek project. We will have the Lake Susan Park Pond completed. We will have the spent lime facility, depending on what we find with the wetland to the south of it. So we might have something in there. So we'll address the loading, all the external loading to it, meaning the internal loading. And our adaptive management says one managed carp, we got that. 2 manage vegetation, 3 manage for water quality with the alum. So that's where we're at. That's the intent. Next 2 years, vegetation management, and then
Just kind of curious as far as expectations of how the lake is managed, because it's such a shallow lake. Is that clear, do you think, or?
so we did have a very robust discussion about the fact that, and Scott, please feel free to chime in, about the fact that you are going to have a large vegetation response when we treat that lake. Many of them, I would say most of them understood that. There was still a few holdouts, there's always those lakeshore owners that really want to live on Lake Minnetonka or, but I think as we go through this process and educate them more and more. The other thing is because they don't have an organization, they haven't attended like our lake summits that we have or any of our other shallow lake education that we've had. So this is really for most of them their first exposure to it. So I'm hoping that over the next 2 years working with them, we can really drive that point home that temper your expectations. It's not going to be, but we can definitely make it better than it is.
Right, no, absolutely, I hear that. I just want to make sure we're.
And that, and we have that with all of our shallow lakes, President Pedersen can
Mhm.
attest for it on her own lake, and Mitchell and Red Rock, it's always, some of them really get it. Some of them don't. It really depends on how they want to use that lake too. I mean, Lotus, it's the same thing. How do you want to use the lake? And that's, you get into the arms and it gets different. So yeah, it's a good point.
So I have one other question about the wetland management money. I just want to make sure that the changeover from the old method of determining wetlands to whatever has been now recommended by Bowser, it sounded to me like there's going to be some additional cost and going back and redoing what we've done already. Is there money built into that?
There is. It's predominantly staff time, and Zach and Rachel have been doing that this year. They've already started going out and doing the hydrogeomorphic analysis. They aren't going to do all of them. Right now, they're just doing a representative sample to see if there's a surrogate in there that can be used to get to that. The other part will be as we go through the regulatory process of what we want to do with wetland protection within our own rules and our buffers and how we want to do it. So we don't want to get too far ahead and then find out, oh crap, we should have done this while we were doing it. Yes, there is adequate budget in there to work.
I just want to make sure he's protected enough to really do the right scientific work that needs to be done.
Yep. Any other questions on the district-wide programs? Okay. Capital. So we are nearing the end of our 10-year plan. What we have left are a couple of creek restoration projects and some alum treatment, and then the Lotus Lake watershed improvement projects. So we'll start with Bluff. And Engineer Soviak, please help me out with schedules as I move through this. Wetland and Pioneer, you remember we came forward with a change order two meetings ago, I believe now. We have we had completed the maintenance for the project, the maintenance cycle for the project. So that was to add an additional 3 years. So that's the annual cost. It's just being reflected in that right there, the wetland restoration and Pioneer. We'll do that for another 3 years. We'll reevaluate at that time. I'm hoping either through volunteer organizations or water steward program. At that point, we can start taking on the maintenance ourselves. Bluff Creek V5, that's the headwaters. So this money that is put in there right now, yes, for 26, we will complete design this year. Next year, we will go out for bid, anticipating to have probably one pay application late in 2026. So start construction late fall of 26 and have one pay application. So that's what that money is set as dedicated for there. Legals in there to draft contracts, bidding documents, et cetera. Same with engineering and construction observation. Riley?
Is that the one that had the landfill or the toxic stuff that you had to switch locations?
So,
Can't think of the name of what you
yeah,
called it.
yeah, the promiscuous dump.
Thank
there,
you.
Right, but yeah, so
It's an odd name, isn't it?
I have been, we are looking at moving the weir and moving the flood storage. The property owner has not been overly responsive to it. In fact, he wasn't responsive to the initial environmental site assessment when we did it. So really to keep the schedule moving as is, we've moved the weir upstream. So it's,
Yeah, you presented both options to us at one
Yeah,
point
so
in
it's
time.
that other
So
option.
it's the other option.
we're looking at. Oddly enough, in going back and looking at the phase one ESA, the phase one environmental site assessment, the bulk of the dump is actually on the south side of the creek where the city put the pond in. So I don't know if they cleaned it up at that time when they did it. So, but yeah, the bulk of the dump is actually on the other side of the creek. Okay. Spring Road Conservation. So this money is set aside as though we are still paying interest on the contract for deed for the entire 2026. It makes no assumption of anything other than that. So it includes the special assessment taxes, the promissory note, as well as the contract for deed interest payments. I have included legal in there because we'll be doing some bonding at some point and getting that through. And then professional services, I would like to get an architect on board sooner rather than later to start really evaluating that site. That professional service may be used as well for evaluating the restoration of the property. But either way, I wanted to earmark some money in there so that we could start actually planning on how we're going to develop and utilize that property.
So does this include the property tax?
It does include
That's
the
part
property
of what
tax.
we're paying, right?
Yep. Yep.
So
So,
why isn't it broken out? I don't, it's under real estate?
It's under real
yeah,
estate.
so real estate has all of it, has all of the
interest in the.
the interest payments,
That's right.
the taxes, and so everything that we're owed on it. Oh, wait, actually, our real estate taxes are here. And that's a really good point. I'll have to go. No, they are in there. I did include the property tax with that because the special assessment is not getting paid yet. That's assuming we're just paying the interest on the special assessment. But that is something we could have a large discussion about. With our reserve funds, there are portions of it, of the special assessment we could pay off and not have that sitting out there. And not even have to worry about that. So there are other things. Yeah,
That's the Eden Prairie special
that
assessment,
is correct. Yeah.
and that's like 250,000 or something. I
I
don't.
don't remember off the top
It's
of my
about
head
that,
what it was.
270.
Yeah, so when it came out of Green Acres, then the special assessment went on it, yeah.
I guess I'm kind of in favor of keeping it the way that it is until we know what's happening with the lawsuit.
Yep.
Hopefully we'll know more about that before this thing finally has to be set in stone and forwarded. That's fine. That's just my opinion.
I pull up my spreadsheet about the costs associated with this property. Any reason it could not be shared in a public meeting?
But I thought you just already covered it.
Okay, yeah. So the taxes are within there though, to answer your question, the shortest way. Rice Marsh, doing the alum treatment, hopefully we'll get some bids and they'll come in reasonably well. We'll do the Rice Marsh Lake and the Round Lake. So I've earmarked 5,000 just for follow-up sampling and testing on the lake next year after doing the alum treatment. Upper Riley restoration. Tonight we are asking to authorize solicitation of bids for that project. Our hope is then that we would finalize the agreements in the next week or two, solicit the bids. Then we would tabulate the bids, and at the September meeting, come back to the board to award the project. So the money that is here would be that we would have the bulk of the project done in the early part of 2026. So most of that 1.3 million would be spent early in the year, which is another thing to think about when we talk about cash on hand reserves, because we won't have our levy disbursement until July,
Right.
and we'll have about 1.3 million. We anticipate that will have to go out just on this project in January, February, March. But that is and then that would do substantial completion of the project. St. Hubert's, that 11,000 is for maintenance, vegetation maintenance of the prairie. That will be ongoing for another 2 years. The Lucy Ann and Susan watershed, and we'll see it again on the Mitchell and Red Rock. We really anticipate that all being done this year. I did earmark 10,000 in both of those in case there's additional data that wanted to be collected or something that came out of it that the managers would like to investigate further. So it's really just in case there's follow-up work on it. Lake Susan Preserve Wetland Internal Control. So this is the large wetland that is south of Lake Susan. We put in the spent lime facility, and the spent lime facility gets good removals. Cannot come close to handling the volume of water that comes out of that wetland. When we did coring of the wetland itself, sediment coring, we found the release rates, phosphorus release rates within the wetland were twice as high as they were in Susan, and Susan is high. So they were, I want to say 14 parts. So this money is earmarked to do a feasibility study, to go through our planning process, do the feasibility study, bring it to the managers, come up with a project, modify the plan to include that project, and then move forward with a project if the managers so choose.
So basically that would be an alum treatment then?
That's what we're thinking at this point, yes. There are some other things that have been used. We could look at that, but I think alum is really what it would be. So about 2 million will be spent in the Riley Creek, about 700,000 in Bluff Creek, and then Purgatory Creek. So I've left, anybody who's been here forever, knows this berm has been in there forever, and I've left it in there. The city wants to do it. They don't have capacity to manage the project. We don't have capacity to manage the project, but I've left it in there because I'm optimistic that one day the city and the district will come up with a solution for it. Lotus Lake in-lake phosphorus control, that actually will be finished. So there's no funding for that as well. Lotus Lake Watershed Improvement Project. Most of you will remember it was LL 1, 3, 5, and 8 that we looked at as a whole. Is there a way to realize savings if we were to, combine all of these projects into one project? Then we just have one contract to administer, one bid package put out. So we did a feasibility study, and what we found were one of the areas really wasn't viable. We looked at the two small ponds that are off of Frontier Trail, and is there a way to make those function better? They weren't. So then we looked across the street from that, and decided that we could use an iron enhanced sand filt infiltration system. The city is redoing Frontier Trail, so they are just incorporating that into their overall road project. So that got peeled out. We looked at the crossing from underneath Kerber Boulevard going into Kerber Pond, just north of Chanhassen city offices. There, it feeds into two wetlands and then goes into Lotus Lake. When we looked at the fix for that, there's just a lot of sediment, a lot of scouring that goes on in it. We felt it didn't really rise to a capital project. It's something that could be done by the city's public works department. So that's been removed from the overall project. There's one other area. Then we look further downstream from that. So there's a large wetland that's perched above a smaller wetland. And we looked at, is there a way to gain efficiencies with that? And I'm blanking on why we did not.
It just didn't fit into the timing with everything.
So that left us with North Lotus Lake Park. So that's what we're looking at, is the North Lotus Lake Watershed Improvement Project within the park. The monies that are set aside in here are for two things. One, for design, feasibility and design, and working with the artists and landscape architects to incorporate educational elements and other interactive elements into it to create basically a stormwater park where the treatment facilities are the amenity and we can get education outreach. We did hold with the Creek Week kickoff, we held our first pop-up event, what you call it, I guess, out there, and we took a lot of comments on it. Positive. The comments that we received were primarily positive. We have received a couple of negative comments, just to be expected. So, all right, that's what that money is earmarked for, to get through design and have something to bring to the managers, bring to the city of Chanhassen, and respond to that and react to that. And then Kerber Ravine, we were going to do a plan modification.
Oh, just had a quick question. You talked about the Frontier Trail project, and as part of that, I know they solicited people who wanted or willing to put like rain gardens or stormwater cutouts into their yard. And they set the bar really high for what they were willing to pay for. And is that not something that brings, because I have one neighbor who was kind of disappointed they're not getting one, but they wanted to take their whole front yard. They wanted, one that goes down the side of the yard or something.
Yeah, I must admit, I haven't talked to Joe Seidel too much about what they were doing or offering for their rain garden project. We have not been involved in that other than.
Okay. I was just curious because it was the size that they're I'm letting one be put in my yard, but it's probably 50 feet into my yard by 50. I mean, it's like all of that area, which is, it's very surprising where they kind of cut off.
Yeah, and
I didn't, and these are all houses that are across the street from Lotus Lake along Frontier Trail, or on it.
right.
So I was just curious, as a watershed district, if we would partnered or had talked about anything with that.
I have not. I don't know if in your review, if Joe has brought it up to you at all.
Joe Seidel at the city did bring it up during the permitting process, but the city's viewing those as above and beyond the requirements. So the BMP's, this infiltration base off of Frontier that they are proposing gets what they need to meet the criteria. But then they were going to talk to the residents and see who would let them put in rain gardens. Sounds like they got one in your yard in particular, so that's good. Sometimes respondents, it can be difficult to get people to want to give up that much yard space.
Yeah, I said that was just sort of if that's, if they need it this big to be worth their time, is that something, I don't know how much that's worth for the lake, to partner or say, well, we'd kick in X amount to make it worthwhile.
Well, I mean, if they're
Not,
going that large, that's telling me that they're looking at what is going to contribute to that area and sizing it for that, what's coming in. So I would say that is beneficial. And then But I know that on another project that I did when I was with Chaness, and we did try and put in some smaller ones, and they just become overwhelmed. There's just so much drainage to it that it just doesn't function. And that is our Purgatory Creek. Was about 3.6. So total creek capital expenditures about 3.1 million. So this last table is really all of it and how it was calculated. So
You have a question?
yes, sir.
Before you go to this
Yeah.
slide, just at the end here, just wondering, there's the slide that we get at our monthly meetings from BAR that shows the 10-year project
And our process along it where we're at.
process.
Yep.
So do we go through any kind of a review as we get near the end in terms of evaluating the plan versus where we are at the end? Do we have monies that roll over, just things that just sort of stalled? And anyway, I'm just looking at it from a point of view of, we have this 10-year window, and looking back and how we progressed along the way, does that influence at all how we look at the next year plan? You know what I'm saying?
I think I do.
I'm just, in terms of looking at, this is what we set out to do 10 years ago. We had this 10-year plan, and every year we look at chunks as we go along.
Yep.
And now we're getting near the end. We have about 2.5 years left in this plan. So as we get near the end, is there any look back in terms of how we're doing to the point where we're at the beginning point of the next 10-year cycle? That's my comment, I guess,
Yeah.
from a learning point of view.
Yes. So in fact, the October meeting that we're planning on having, that is what I want to be able to do with it, is to look back over the last 7 3/4 year at that point and say where we're at, what have we accomplished? Are there projects within that that should still be carried forward just on their own merits? There will be, I mean, it is likely, like, for instance, the North Lotus Lake project may not be finished by the time we adopt our new plan. So there will be certain projects that will carry into the next plan just because we have started them under this plan. We'll have to incorporate it into the plan at that point. Thank you. The last one, this is kind of where we looked at what did we spend on a project and what's carrying forward, and then therefore what do we need to levy to pay up the balance. But in a way, it's a way of just zeroing it all out, saying, well, what do we need to levy? So I'm not going to go through all of these again, but if people have specific questions about it, happy to answer it. But you'll notice ones like most of our administrative costs, we're going to be over budget. Total admin, we are going to be over budget about $100,000. But there are other areas where we'll be significantly under budget. The Upper Riley Creek restoration, we had thought we were going to be starting it in the spring, and that we would actually be completed with that project now. Due to a number of different things, the biggest one being trying to fit the decant facility in at the city's public works, which didn't happen. So that got delayed for that. But for the most part, that's really what it is. What did we say we were going to spend? What have we spent? What moves forward? And then what do we need to levy to make up for that balance? That, bottom line it, proposing a budget of about $6.65 million, or excuse me, $6.85 million. Why is that?
Let's have a
Tom, what am I missing?
question here too.
It is 6.885 though. Let's go
Dad,
to,
here, did he just not add this up correctly? He thinks this should be 6.8.
First column.
and it's coming out of 6.5.
Yeah, it's, hold on.
It's my notes offhand.
Okay.
We'll have to get back on that.
The overall budget. So
At the very bottom,
this,
at the total budget dollars.
it is 6.85 is the total budget. Expenditures for the year. We are proposing a levy of, I am proposing a levy of 4.245 million. Which would leave us a reserve of about $3 million. So that's the bottom line on the budget. And those would be the projects that we'd be doing out of that budget. The questions I have are, so that levy is almost flat. So it's almost the exact same levy as we had last year. So it's in effect a 0% levy. I think it's an increase of like, yeah, one tenth of 1%. It leaves us a reserve of about 41% of our anticipated annual costs, not including any grant funding that we'd be getting out of it. That's really it. That's it. So we will, when we are in the meeting itself, right now that is on the consent agenda to call a public hearing for our August meeting. If the managers would like to delay that to the September meeting, then we take public comment and authorize or approve the budget and levy at the same meeting. That's fine. Just take it off consent at that time.
So in looking at this, I always thought it's a little odd that you bring it and now you're giving public comment at the same meeting as you're voting. It's like, if there's any public comment, you're not really taking into account what the public comment is if you're voting on moving it in the same meeting. So I think doing it this way is, I think it's better, because if we have some public comment that we need to really respond to, we have the time in which to do it instead of, oh, another half an hour, we need to vote on this thing because it's got to be there by the 15th of September. And, in looking through how you did this, I think what you did was you took conservatively what we need for changes. We just don't have enough information yet on some of the stuff, like what to do with the spring road property. And we have to just make some conjecture to move ourselves forward. So I think doing it conservatively is probably better than saying, oh, well, geez, let's just all take a guess and and change this. So I'm in favor of doing this. Moving this forward along today so that it goes to public comment next month.
The budget.
Yes. Yes.
So we would have to publish by the 17th of August to meet it needs to be published twice.
Right.
Prior to the meeting.
On 17th of August.
17th of July, yes. Sorry, thank you. Yeah, 17th of July. Well, it's goes twice. So any changes,
Can be the second time you publish it.
no,
Or no?
once it's published, that's it. That's what we're publishing. So I would need any recommended changes by the 16th, really, in that.
No, by tonight,
Yeah,
because the
yeah,
actual.
exactly. We
Right.
won't have it.
I think because we've talked about this already a few times, and I'm comfortable with it. At least I don't know how all of you feel about it, but I am.
Yes.
So I
Yeah.
guess I have one question.
Okay.
On the, that's the wrong thing. The Purgatory Creek. The area by that dam that's washed out a number of times. Do we just not know what to do with it? I don't know. And we're saying we don't have money, the city doesn't have money,
Oh,
but how do we, did we rank it?
so We have not scored it. That would, so that's part of it. It'd have to be a city project. It's not in our plan at all. So it would need to be a city's project, and then we would,
But the city's saying that it should be a watershed project. So we're not doing it because we don't agree with the city. Shouldn't we at least rank it to know? Well,
We'd
to
have to
do
do
it,
plan
we'd
amendment.
have to do a plan amendment, but how much would it cost to rank it to see how important it is? I mean, you look downstream and we got the Minnesota River that's got, tons of sediment in it. And let me see, earlier this year, we had a meeting with Lower Min and they're saying all they do is dredge. That's all they do because they can't afford to do anything else.
That's what they were set up to do.
That's true. But here we are and they look at it, all the other watersheds just ignore the stuff that's going out of their watershed.
So we did, or actually Alliant did, looked at the water quality benefit by bringing it back up the 8 inches or whatever it needs to go back. It was not a significant change from the current.
So there has been at least a high level review
Yes.
and it doesn't meet most of our requirements.
And in some ways, it's helpful to us because it's a very good carp recruitment or a carp capture area because of the way the water flows over it right now.
So as it is degraded or whatever, it isn't really causing a huge environmental problem. Okay, we should probably note that as our reason for not doing it.
Well, yeah.
So part of the reason why it's not a big problem, where it overflowed that berm,
Sure.
there's sheet pile in there doesn't let it cut in deeper. So the steel sheet pile sits on both sides of the trail. If that sheet pile wasn't there,
Be a big
it would be a much bigger issue.
Okay.
That is where we do park recruit.
That's where Josh and company do go out and backpack and electrofish in that area. The design that we were working on, the conceptual design, would take the spillway that's supposed to be the spillway,
Sure.
and we create a ledge there where we would backpack fish from that in that case. And that would be the district's cost. All of that would be the district's cost.
Bottom line, the benefit isn't worth the cost in our rating system.
But they would like us to do it because, yeah, we were the original permittee back in, it was.
No, the original permit would have been 96, I believe. And then
Take your word for it.
that was the first phase, and permitting then continued into the early 2000s. Was put online in 2006 or 2007.
There's developed, you had a
Okay,
question.
so I agree that we should push it forward. And we don't have to worry about it if it doesn't meet our criteria. And that's a better reason than we didn't have money for it.
We had allocated money for it for 3 years straight and then never aligned.
City.
But, even if the city wasn't ever going to do it, we wouldn't do it because it's not worth.
We would not do it. City did not want to do it. Yeah, and it hasn't been like, arguing with the city or fighting. It's just their public works doesn't have the capacity right now to take on the management of that project. So they asked us to take on the management of the project. We would have to do a plan amendment and change everything. So it didn't make sense for us. So we had dedicated funds to say, yeah, if you guys do it, apply to us for, a cost share on that program and we'll pay for that portion of it.
So we're talking about taking this out of the budget.
Yeah, it is out of the budget.
It's out of the
Essentially,
budget.
I've left it in as a line item, just as a placeholder, but yeah, it's no longer in there.
Any other comments?
I found the difference on that thing.
Wow.
It's on that very last sheet. This one we have all the columns. Look way down at the bottom. It didn't carry over that reserve buffer
Oh, it's this?
into the total. That's the difference.
Ah,
Thank you.
any other questions or comments?
Nope.
Okay, I'm hearing none. I think we're moving forward. Do you want us to take a break for lunch or dinner? Do you want us to continue to move on to community engagement?
So I think it's up to the managers. I don't believe that the community engagement plan will take very long.
Okay.
I think we'll have plenty, ample time after we go through the plan to eat before the meeting starts, but it's up to the managers what
We'll
you'd like to
do it.
do.
Go ahead then, I think, right? Everybody says yes? Yes. Okay.
I need more than.
Oh, the food's not here yet.
So there's
Good-
that,
good
so that's
reason.
gonna kind of put a damper on the whole thing. there.
Okay, then.
Details.
Okay, so,
Now, this is what Liz presented to us.
Yep.
For the most part, last month.
yep, it is. And so, there's been some fine tuning of it, just putting it really into an overall plan. I hope everyone had a chance to read it. And, Liz is available, for questions, but so it's interesting because you talked about, or they say you have to have a outreach, a community engagement plan that's approved by the board for them. But if you look in rule, it's not there. So, all right, but we'll do it.
Yes.
Yeah, so I have a lot of problems with this, okay? Especially on that part where we're inviting state agencies in. Because basically, we just have to notify them we're gonna start the process for a 10-year plan. We don't want to necessarily get their input. I mean, I've been through this with Bowser since 2014, so I know.
So what are you saying? I don't know what you're saying.
So, all right, I'm talking about the engagement.
What engagement? Yeah, that's what I've got. What
Go
engagement?
back to the top. Understand issues of most concern to the state agencies. County, cities, and other local units of government, I get that part, but the state agencies piece. I don't know where you're going. And,
That,
and so I just had a lot of problems with this part.
that's law. They have to issue identification. We have to,
We
our
have to
stakeholders must,
They will engage on it. They will give us comments, but we aren't necessarily asking what their priorities are and what their concerns are. They react to what we put forward. The way that was written, I found disturbing.
Okay, so you don't want to have their input
yeah,
on this?
Well, they will give input. That's law. All I'm saying is,
Have a,
they'll understand the concern again. I don't understand. We just need to notify them and then they will react to what we put together and tell us. But this bit about understand issues of most concern to the state agencies, I find really trouble because that's
Maybe
not.
it's just the wording of it. Is it the wording
just
that's getting to you? Yeah,
Well, it makes it sound like you're looking for their input to guide what we're doing as opposed to us saying, this is what we're doing.
and then
No,
get
We're not
input.
looking for their input.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. The wording makes it sound like we're looking for their
Exactly.
input rather
That's
than
what-
saying, we do our plan and then they react to it. It's like, are they guiding how we're developing this plan as opposed to them reacting to what we decide we're gonna do? And this invites them in to help design our plan. I think that's your point kind of, right?
So watershed district, we've got some latitude to strengthen it.
uh,
we have latitude to strengthen, but
Some of our standards, we can establish standards, that are
Certain-
higher standard than
certainly,
state standard.
yes. But could I just read this part of Rule 8410.0045 that is concerning issue identification and assessment? Priority issues. Each plan shall identify priority issues in consideration of water management problems, including prevention of future water management problems, funding levels, and regional, county, city, state, and federal water management priorities that are identified under this part. And then it continues. So I don't,
It's the state agencies I have a problem.
but they're
They're
listed
listed.
as being
They're listed
required
in rule.
to help us identify.
We're required to notify them.
Well, that's not what it
Okay.
said.
I'm confused too, because this just says we want to understand the issues that are concerned with all the people we work with. It doesn't say what we're going to do with that understanding or how we're going to solicit it. It just says that's one of our goals is to understand, like maybe they've identified issues with chlorides, and that's something we want to pull in. So I don't see it as telling us we have to do something. It's just understanding the issues they've identified as important. Why? Yeah, I don't see that as making us obligated to do anything.
Should.
That's how I read it.
That-
That feels like the plain language reading of that.
I guess, I guess they can say what they want to say, but what we end up doing and passing is what we end up doing.
Well, they will comment on what we're doing.
Well, that's
And we
fine.
have to respond to their comments.
Yeah.
That's fine. I mean, that means we at least are considering what they want, which I think
To me, it
is
sounded like we're
necessary.
soliciting what their concerns
Oh.
are. Maybe that,
But
maybe I'm
you
just
are,
reading it all.
you're soliciting everybody's concerns, and then we,
Yeah, 'cause the rest
decide
of
what
them
to do
are
with it.
partners.
I mean, well, can't state agencies be partners too in some way? They can have multiple rules.
So Joe, was that your primary objection to this?
Biggest one?
That was the biggest one? Is there more?
Guess I'm concerned about how we're going about the community engagement piece. It just seems like a real passive approach to me. It didn't seem like, I see all these other plans come through, and I see all the engagement, like we're watching. Groundwater plan just recently was totally engaged with their community and everybody in it, all kinds of people. And it was, so we relegate, we're concerned with the counties, obviously, our cities and other government units, but then we just kind of lump everything else in the general public. I don't know, it just didn't feel healthy.
So when I read this, my first thought was perhaps what we didn't get was an identification of what communities we're going to solicit input from. The general public is pretty broad. I'd like to make sure that, like, the low income population is in some way, the older generation, I mean, I guess maybe it's just not specified in here that these pop-up events
I
or
don't
how they,
I think this is the place to specify.
yeah, see, and that's the difference between just reading through this and thinking about where you're going to get the input from. Because that was my first thought, was I would like a little bit more identification of what events or what things we're going to do to be able to cover all the parts of our general public. That's my only comment.
So, and we have, Liz and company have started compiling a list of just what you're talking about.
Yeah, see that, as long as I can see what eventually they're going to do, I'm going to think, well, okay.
The concern is if we list all of the audiences in the plan, then
Yeah.
that's the audiences you're doing. And then if we decide to
Add
broaden
more.
that, that's not what the plan says.
Yeah, see, that's
So the more
my
prescriptive
thought
your
too.
plan is, the less latitude you have to
guess my concern is I want to be sure that we definitely invite all the people that care about ecosystem health. And that doesn't seem to jump out at me.
Yeah, like when I read this, my initial thought was, this is how you put together a plan to work with the cities, counties, state agencies. And because it seems like it's really heavily slanted towards that. And it's not that it is, this is how it reads. I'm just saying this is how it reads. That's all. And so to make me feel a little more comfortable, I just need more information, either now or later. It doesn't really matter to me because I know Liz is gonna come up with a ginormous list of all the things she's gonna have to do. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, we could,
Complete confidence. in
Yeah,
this.
yeah, I
That's
know
not
it's
the
gonna
issue.
happen. It's just, it comes across. Yeah, yeah.
Doesn't seem very user friendly. And I was concerned about state agencies, especially we've got issues with people that have started down plans and started to do things, and then state agencies jump all over. So we want to be clear about what we want, and where we want to go.
so,
But I want to also think of us as cutting edge, and we want to set. We're trying to do some paradigm shift here. I mean, I've got tons of stuff on what's coming out, drinking water stuff. I mean, there's just one water plan after another, and then I just came across the Groundwater Protection Act of 1989. And when the gal did the presentation on the public health, and presented one on safe drinking water, I went up and talked to her, and she said, that's like my Bible. That's what I go to. And so there's huge discussions going on water policy right now. And a lot of it's like, what we're doing is not adequate. Where are all the gaps? Where are the barriers? Why aren't we doing better? And part of it's the state agencies get sued by people in the Southeast when they got nitrates on the water. So all this stuff's coming to the fore. And they're rethinking this, reacting to that legislation or that litigation. So I just like, let's do bold.
but you're,
Water.
yeah, remember the last plan we went through? So we had an engagement plan, but each meeting, we came in with what we wanted them to react to. So every meeting is really the watershed district driving that meeting. So if we're sitting down and what we're discussing is, you know, anything, we get to drive that discussion in that meeting. So,
So this lovely chart. And these are the kind of things I would love to have people react to. This is what came out of you guys. I wasn't even here. Sustainable groundwater resources, ecologically healthy waters, holistic lake management, improved infiltration and evapotranspiration. Preserve remaining ecologically sensitive lands and habitats, restore and protect natural habitats and stream-based flows, enrich connection and natural resource that, relationship between people and natural resources. A well-run organization focused on collaboration. Climate resiliency within the watershed. So this is what I thought Work came up with some of their real primary concerns.
See, and the way I'm seeing this versus what you're bringing to us is
the
it,
plan,
yes, that's the plan.
that's the plan.
And this is
How do we
how we're
get to
gonna
there?
get it, how we're gonna get to that. That is how we get to that. Well, how she's doing this is by using the government agencies, the board, the TAC, the CAC, the general public with the community engagement things. But we're gonna ask for a lot of things like that. Yes, it's exactly what it is. Did you do the survey? Have you done the survey? Okay, so I did the survey and I felt much better after I did the survey because it was like, okay, there's a lot of stuff in here that you would not normally think of when you're looking at this dry piece of paper and the chart. You see what I mean? I felt better after I.
This,
You know,
what it is we're doing.
this isn't what we're gonna ask, it's how we're gonna
Yeah,
ask it.
yeah,
How-
yeah.
How are we gonna engage?
How we get the input in to make the
And
tenure.
then that'll get to an end result of the plan. That plan will
just
have,
go on what we get back.
Yeah.
yeah, but we need to have that input in order to go into a plan and say, yes, this
We
is our
also need
plan.
some buy-in and some identifications of what we can and can't do.
Yeah, that's true.
I mean, that's the hard part, is to find where and how you can achieve progress in these areas, you know, with the cooperation of the city or the county or the state
Right.
government. So that's, in my mind, where that understanding issues comes, and where can we find that room to do that?
Right.
I think that's gonna be really hard.
Well, we've got, yes,
You were gonna say, something.
like Hennepin County's got a natural resource plan. Minnetonka's got one, Bloomington's got one.
Oh, yeah.
There's a bunch of stuff out there that,
we just haven't gotten to that yet because we're figuring out how to get the information to make that. The,
Right.
part of my process in the last few months has been recognizing that although I would want things to change very quickly, I would want all of these wonderful things to happen. It's just just such a huge, broad thing for 10 years that I have to keep saying to myself, patience. I got to be patient because it takes a while to do all of this, to collect all of it, to put it in a format, to figure out what we can afford to do. It's not something that we can just decide on a few months and then say, here are the things we're going to do. It doesn't, it's all of those steps.
it's gotta be evolving.
Yeah, it's a hard thing to be patient.
So there are things like the fact that Bowser people are, the wetland staff are saying to me, we can get you your WAC authority back. You can have your Wetland Conservation Act authority back. We'll help you get that. So how does that change anything that we're doing? And if we're looking at some paradigm shifts, just want to make sure they're out there. I mean, I just, and maybe, I trust Liz totally, that you're gonna get us there. I just worry that I'm not gonna rubber stamp something that I'm.
You're looking at an end product though.
Yeah.
This is just, how do we even get into the boat?
It's the process to do it.
Yeah.
The process to make it.
We did a SWOT analysis that I.
We haven't done any of that stuff yet. That's,
But it's gonna be key to what
and that's
driving our.
all
rules and
coming.
driving- Okay,
That's part of the whole planning process. So
is that in there?
it is not specific.
Everything on that little phrase?
Yeah, there's stakeholder input, identify priority issues. Yes, that will all be under the smoke part of it.
I
So,
guess
so
there's a lot, okay, we're gonna gather stakeholder input. I just want to make sure our priorities are.
and that stakeholder input could be meeting with the cities that have gotten together and put together a wellhead protection plan jointly. It could be getting together with HOA association. It could be getting together with nonprofit groups. It could be getting together with anglers association. So that could be, and
You need to hear, Terry. Thank you.
yep, that could be anyone.
This seems
We
so-
just, yeah, we just, I mean, didn't want to write a 15,000 page engagement.
Just wanted to make sure that we were all on the same page here.
No, absolutely. I'm looking at this and thinking, how do we, like, an item on our agenda tonight, the Fox Hill. Steep slopes, cutting, you know, they're eroding things, cutting down a ton of trees, putting in infiltration. It's like,
Be nice wetland.
really, you know, when it's like, all we shoehorn in. Yeah, I don't, but is there anything we can do about something like that?
Talk's got ordinance on trees. They won't let them cut down.
Well, they've got a tree plan, but you know, to put this in there, new outlet into Lotus Lake, I just, that just blows my mind that you can put an infiltration basin on a 19% slope.
Right. Common sense ought to be someplace.
I,
Okay.
Tom, you were gonna say something. No, we're not.
No.
It's coming.
It scared me.
It's coming.
Now I'm gonna vote for something.
This is just a, Bowser, you have something.
So no.
We're,
That's not good enough. I gotta know.
They have something. We will,
Step on the
we
button.
will, as a group, go through all of our stakeholders and all of the audience we want to reach. And each audience we reach might send us in a different direction to a new audience that we want to reach. So, and to be able to put all of that in a plan, it's just,
Reach out to all of those people. Especially our cities where they're doing some of this innovative stuff. Like you looked up about their tree thing that they had. Bloomington's doing some stuff too, so. All right,
yeah,
okay,
just.
Tommy, you had a comment or a question?
Just a general comment again, I've been going through this and digging into it more, and I've been doing some of what Jill's been doing and trying to dive into the details here when this is really the oversight plan to get it started off.
Right.
And this actually has lead-ins to EHAP and all kinds of the people we've been talking to all along. And then the steps along the way here need to be filled in with the details, and we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So this is really just, gets us out of the gate, right? And
Right.
doing,
Pre-flight checklist.
Exactly.
it's like a pre-flight checklist. So I think, at least from my perspective, I see things in there and I've got more comments to add, but they're not to be added at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Just about even, the next steps on kind of getting into the next layer of what this thing is. And we're not there yet. You can't do it all at once. You can't have it all in upfront and you can't have it all into this document.
so we have our first steering committee meeting July 22nd, is it, Liz? 24th.
24th.
And then we will come back to the board with what's come out of that, and that'll prompt conversation with you and where we went. So it's going to be, and we want to come to the CAC after all of these meetings as well and get their thoughts on where should we be going with it. So think of it as a dynamic process, adaptive management of plan writing.
can we attend the steering committee meeting?
Pardon?
Can we attend the steering committee?
I would prefer the managers did not. Because you will drive a conversation in a certain way, and I want them to have a conversation. And then bring that to the managers. So the managers then can,
Well, you could probably, are you recording it?
no, we are not recording the strategic steering committee.
Still excluded out of the process. Why worry about this stuff?
But we're part of the process because one of the big things is they're looking for our input too. So,
Yeah, but if
Sooner
we
or
can't
later-
hear their input, then
well, I think we eventually do get it, correct?
Yes,
See?
we have to get it filtered to Terry,
yes,
the gatekeeper.
yes.
So again, I'll add one more comment again. It's your job to do the details of this stuff. It's our job to kind of steer the direction of the ship
Right.
and not be the driver of the details necessarily. It's like recognizing all the different roles in the watershed again. You are the gatekeeper. That's what you're hired to be, partially. So anyway,
Do you need anything else from us
I do not.
about this?
I do not. This is actually very helpful. We will expand on what general public means. and
Okay,
I've heard that.
Thank
and
you, thank you.
can
I,
certainly
I,
do that.
I know I have to be patient and wait because you have to be patient and wait with a big process like this. It's not easy.
And you know, some of the things we've talked, well, let's see, and
All right, so we're adjourning at 6:30. We will re-adjourn at 7 for the meeting.